Okay, so trying to get solar power in an apartment building can sometimes feel as difficult as like teaching a fish to ride a bicycle, right? Like it's just not really meant to be.
Yeah.
But we're doing a deep dive today on SolShare
Okay.
to find out if it really is the answer to this problem.
Right. Because you've got all these people living in close proximity.
Right.
And with strata properties and solar, it's like you can't live with them.
Yeah.
And you can't really install solar panels without them.
Ouch.
Okay.
Strata nightmares.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness,
Yeah.
a lot of people just think that solar is just out of the question when it comes to shared buildings. So what's the issue there?
Well, even if you convince your neighbors that solar's a great idea, which is a big if, you've got limited roof space, you've got the potential for a messy installation process, and then the question of who benefits and how much.
Yeah, like whose sunlight is it anyway?
Yeah, exactly. It gets really complicated really fast.
Yeah, my balcony gets more sun than yours is not exactly the recipe for neighborly harmony.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay, individual solar setups are out.
Right.
But then you've got those systems that are meant for like the common areas of an apartment. What about those?
Yeah, so those are usually just powering things like the shared lighting or the elevator.
Right.
They don't really address the core problem, which is getting that clean, affordable solar energy flowing directly to your apartment.
Right. Well, it's like expensive and inefficient on one hand.
Yeah.
Or complicated and potentially unfair on the other.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that a lot of apartment dwellers just feel stuck.
Right.
So is that where SolShare comes in?
That is exactly where SolShare comes in.
Hit me with it.
They take a different approach.
Okay.
Think of it as a smart distributor for solar energy in your building.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this smart distributor thing.
Okay, so instead of each apartment having its own isolated solar setup,
Right.
SolShare takes the energy generated by a shared system on the roof and intelligently distributes it to all the units.
So it's like having a superpowered building manager.
That's a great way to put it.
Who makes sure everyone gets their fair share of the solar pie.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really beneficial for you as the resident. SolShare is designed to use as much of the solar power generated within your building as possible before it sends any excess to the grid.
And that's important because
using your own solar energy is usually much more financially advantageous than selling it back to the grid.
So you're basically getting more bang for your buck with your solar.
Exactly. Yeah. You're using more of your own clean energy.
Yeah.
Which means you're buying less from the grid at those higher rates.
Right. So it's like having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah.
Which means you're buying less from the grid at those sometimes ridiculously high rates.
Absolutely.
Okay. But how much of a difference are we actually talking here?
Yeah.
Does SolShare really deliver on these promises?
They do. Their data shows that SolShare can increase self-consumption by a whopping 40 to 50% compared to traditional setups.
40 to 50%?
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's significant.
Can you break that down for me?
Okay.
What does that actually look like for someone living in a building with SolShare?
Okay, so let's say it's a sunny afternoon.
Okay.
Your solar panels are generating more than enough energy to power your entire apartment. With SolShare, that extra energy goes to your neighbors first. Without SolShare, that surplus energy might just get sent back to the grid.
Right.
And you might not get the best return for it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's being a good neighbor and a savvy energy consumer.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves and start saving the planet one sunbeam at a time, let's talk about the practicalities here.
Okay.
How does SolShare actually work in a real-world setting?
Okay.
What's the setup like?
So a single SolShare unit can connect a maximum of 15 apartments with single-phase power, which is what most homes use.
Right.
Or if your building has a mix of apartments and, say, a cafe on the ground floor, it can handle up to 5 three-phase connections.
Okay.
With each of those potentially serving multiple single-phase units.
So whether you're living in like a small boutique apartment block or a high-rise with a cafe downstairs, SolShare can handle it.
Yeah, it's very adaptable.
It's pretty impressive. But what if you've got a massive apartment complex?
Right.
Like we're talking hundreds of units. Can SolShare actually scale up to handle that?
Absolutely. You can install multiple SolShare units to cover everyone. And in fact, there's an 88 apartment building in New South Wales that's using 6 SolShares right now.
Wow.
Which just goes to show how adaptable the system is.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's face it, getting 88 apartments to agree on anything, let alone something as potentially like complex as solar
Yeah.
must have been a nightmare.
It can be a challenge.
What happens if not everyone in the building wants to get on board with this?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
You're right. Getting everyone on board can be tricky.
Yeah.
However, SolShare is designed with this in mind.
Okay.
Even if not everyone wants to participate initially, the system can be installed and connected to only those who are interested.
So no need to stage an intervention for that one neighbor that insists on keeping their Christmas lights up all year round.
Exactly. And here's the beauty of it. Let's say down the track, a new resident moves in.
Yeah.
Or someone who was initially hesitant sees everyone else saving money. They can easily be connected to the existing SolShare system.
So it's future-proof in that way.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Imagine moving into a new building
Yeah.
and instantly being part of this solar-powered community.
It's a nice perk.
Yeah. Talk about instant eco-cred.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is all sounding pretty amazing so far.
Good.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room,
Okay.
the cost.
Right.
How much would it actually cost to get SolShare for my building? It's got to be a pretty penny to deck out an entire building with this tech, right?
Well, like any solar installation, it is an investment up front.
Right.
But the good news is SolShare is designed to be more affordable than you might think,
Okay.
especially when you consider those long-term savings.
Right.
They estimate the cost per unit to be in the range of $2,500 to $3,000.
Okay, so not exactly an impulse buy,
Right.
but when you break it down, that's less than what some people would spend on their daily coffee fix in a year.
That's a good point.
And we're talking about years of potentially lower electricity bills here.
Exactly.
So once you've crunched the numbers, how long does it actually take to get SolShare up and running in your building?
Typically from that initial assessment to the moment you're basking in the glow of your very own solar-powered apartment, you're looking at a timeline of around 3 to 5 months.
Okay, so a little bit of patience required.
Yeah.
But hey, good things come to those who wait, especially when it comes to saving money, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, is SolShare just an Aussie thing, or is this green goodness going global?
SolShare is a homegrown Aussie invention,
Right.
which makes sense given our love of sunshine and rooftop solar. But it is rapidly gaining traction internationally.
Okay.
They're already making waves in the UK, the US,
Wow.
and even Europe, where apartment living is the norm.
Aussie ingenuity saving the world.
One sunbeam at a time.
One sunbeam at a time. I love it.
It's a good news story.
Now, you mentioned earlier that SolShare can work with existing solar systems. Does that mean if a building already has some solar panels, they can still get in on the SolShare action?
That's one of the great things about SolShare. It's not just for new builds or complete overhauls. As long as those existing inverters meet the specifications,
Right.
SolShare can integrate them into the system.
So it's all about reducing waste and maximizing existing resources.
Exactly.
I'm just picturing myself at my next, owners corporation meeting,
Right.
armed with all this SolShare knowledge, ready to rally the neighbors behind this idea.
Yeah.
But, there's always that one neighbor
Always.
who just loves to play devil's advocate.
Of course.
What are some of the challenges or drawbacks that might come up in these discussions?
One of the main ones is simply getting everyone on board.
Right.
Even if the majority of residents are keen, it just takes one or two dissenting voices to really slow down the process or even derail it completely.
Oh, the joys of communal living.
Exactly.
So besides the potential for neighborly disagreements,
Right.
are there any technical limitations or downsides to SolShare that we need to be aware of?
One thing to keep in mind is that while SolShare is excellent at maximizing your self-consumption,
Yeah.
there will likely still be times when the system generates more energy than the building can actually use. And as we discussed earlier, the tariffs for exporting that excess energy back to the grid aren't always that advantageous.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a foolproof way to make a profit
Right.
by selling excess solar power.
It's more about maximizing your own usage
Exactly.
and reducing your reliance on traditional energy sources.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of your energy future,
Right.
reducing your carbon footprint,
Yeah.
and saving money on your electricity bills.
Sounds like a win-win to me.
It is a win-win.
But even with all of those benefits, we know that changing habits, right, and convincing people to embrace new technologies
Yeah.
can be a challenge.
It can be.
So how do we effectively communicate the value of SolShare and get everyone as excited about it as we are?
I think it's all about understanding what matters most to your neighbors.
Right.
For some, it might be the environmental aspect.
Right, reducing their carbon footprint.
Exactly, being part of a more sustainable future.
Yeah.
For others, the financial incentive of saving money on their electricity bills might be the key driver.
Right. Because who doesn't love the idea of their home working for them, even when they're not there?
And, never underestimate the power of social proof.
Okay.
As more people adopt SolShare and they experience those benefits firsthand, it's going to create a ripple effect.
Like that whole keeping up with the Joneses phenomenon.
Exactly, for something that benefits everyone.
Speaking of good things, I remember reading that SolShare can actually be paired with batteries.
That's right.
Is that right?
Integrating SolShare with battery storage takes things to a whole new level.
Okay.
Imagine storing that excess solar energy instead of sending it back to the grid.
Okay, so now we're talking about becoming like energy ninjas.
Yes.
We store that excess power in batteries, and then we just use it later when the sun goes down.
You've got it.
Genius.
It's a fantastic way to become even less reliant on the grid.
Right.
Which benefits both your wallet and the environment.
SolShare really does seem like a bit of a game changer.
It has the potential to be.
But with all this talk of solar panels and batteries and smart technology, it's starting to sound a bit complicated. What if I'm not exactly a tech whiz?
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Solar technology can seem daunting.
Right.
But that's where working with experienced installers and energy consultants comes in.
Right. So it's less about me like becoming an energy expert overnight.
Yeah.
And more about finding the right people to guide me through the process.
Exactly. Do your research, ask the right questions, and find a reputable provider who can guide you through the process.
Speaking of research, you mentioned earlier that SolShare is an Australian invention.
Right.
How does it actually stack up against other shared solar solutions that are available?
That's a great question. While SolShare is definitely a front runner in the shared solar space, it's not the only player in the game.
Right.
There are other solutions out there, each with its own pros and cons.
Okay.
Some focus on specific aspects like community ownership or virtual net metering.
Okay, so it's essential to kind of explore all the options before deciding what's best.
Absolutely.
But for someone who's maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all the technical jargon,
right?
What are some like key things to look for when you're comparing all these different shared solar solutions?
Transparency is key.
Okay.
You want a solution that's upfront about its costs, its benefits, and any potential limitations.
Yeah.
Look for clear explanations of how the system works, how that energy is shared and billed, and what happens if someone moves in or out of the building.
So no hidden fees or surprise charges lurking in the fine print.
You don't want any of those.
Okay, good to know.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right.
A reputable provider will be more than happy to address any concerns that you have.
So it's all about feeling empowered.
Exactly.
And informed.
Yeah.
Not pressured or confused.
Absolutely.
Because choosing a shared solar solution is a big decision.
It is a big decision.
Both for like your hip pocket and for the community as a whole.
Yeah. It's a decision that should be made with a clear understanding of those long-term implications.
Speaking of long-term implications, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay.
If SolShare and these other like shared solar solutions really take off, how could that impact the future of energy here in Australia and even globally?
That's a fascinating question to consider.
Yeah, it is.
Traditionally, we've thought about solar energy as something primarily for homeowners with their own rooftop.
Detached home.
Exactly. But solutions like SolShare are opening up that possibility of solar access to millions of people living in apartments and shared spaces.
Yeah.
And that has the potential to be a real game changer for how we think about energy.
So instead of relying solely on those large-scale solar farms or individual rooftop installations, we could have entire apartment buildings generating their own clean energy.
Exactly. And as that happens, we start to create a more distributed and resilient energy grid.
Okay.
One that's less reliant on centralized power plants and fossil fuels, which is a win for everyone.
It's not just about individual buildings going green. It's about creating a cleaner, more sustainable energy system as a whole.
And as we move towards a future where electric vehicles become increasingly common and our reliance on electricity continues to grow, having access to clean,
Yeah.
locally generated solar power
Yeah.
is going to be more critical than ever.
It feels like we're on the cusp of a real energy revolution.
And I think we are.
And shared solar solutions like SolShare are really leading the charge.
They're definitely playing a key role.
It's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's good news.
And the most exciting part is that this isn't some distant futuristic fantasy.
Right.
This is happening right now in buildings across Australia and around the world.
Yeah. The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet.
That's a great way to put it.
But with SolShare and these other innovative solutions, like paving the way, it feels like we're getting closer to that brighter, more sustainable future. I don't know about you, but after that deep dive, I am definitely feeling energized.
It's inspiring stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
But before we go out and start planning our rooftop solar revolution,
right,
let's bring it back to the listener for a second.
Okay.
So if you're listening to this and you live in an apartment and you've been thinking about solar, what is the one key takeaway you should leave this deep dive with?
I think the biggest takeaway is don't assume that solar is impossible just because you don't own a detached house.
Yeah.
SolShare and these other shared solar solutions are making it more realistic than ever to tap into solar energy no matter where you live.
It's about showing people that solar can be accessible and affordable, and a really smart choice whether you're in a sprawling suburban home or a trendy inner city apartment.
Exactly. And don't be discouraged if your building already has some solar.
Right.
Or if not everyone's on board yet.
Yeah.
Talk to your neighbors, see what's possible, and who knows?
Yeah.
You might just spark a solar movement in your building.
I love that, sparking a solar movement.
Get the revolution started.
Maybe we need a little bit of friendly competition between buildings.
Okay.
To see who can be the most solar powered.
I like it.
Leaderboards, bragging rights, the whole works.
A little healthy competition never hurt anyone.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to creating a more sustainable future.
And if this conversation about energy efficiency and renewable resources has got those brain cogs turning, maybe it's time to just take a look at your own energy consumption habits as well.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
Whether it's just being more mindful of your energy use, switching to more energy efficient appliances, or simply just reducing waste.
Yeah.
We can all make a difference.
Couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive into SolShare and Strata Solar.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
It has been a really good one. We've covered so much.
We covered a lot of ground.
We have, from the challenges of apartment solar to how SolShare actually works. And we've even peered into our crystal ball and had a look at the future of energy.
It does feel like this is just the beginning for shared solar.
I think you're right. Now, before we sign off, I do want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. We've talked about how SolShare can transform individual buildings.
Right.
But what about its impact on a much larger scale?
Okay.
Imagine entire neighborhoods, even cities, connected by these shared solar systems.
Wow. Yeah.
Could this be the key to a truly decentralized and sustainable energy grid?
It's a really interesting thought.
It is food for thought.
It is.
That's all the time we have for today, but thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of SolShare and Strata Solar.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep looking up.